Welcome to StaffBuffalo's Pain Points Podcast. Hi, welcome to another episode of the Pain Points Podcast. I'm Lauren Lewis, and I'm here at ACSI, and I'm with James Brand, president of ACSI, and Kristen Huffcut, who is senior relationship manager here at ACSI. Thank you guys so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Thanks for having us.
Of course, you have a beautiful office space, and I had to navigate some turkeys on the way in. You're out in a beautiful, natureful area.
So. That's right. Lots of deers and turkeys.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And this time of year, like if everything kind of melting a little bit, they're out scrounging for food. So
yeah, that's right. We got a beautiful 40-degree weather day today, which is quite warm for how cold it's been recently. So
I know, it's lovely. It's been such a change, and hopefully we're through that part of winter where we're like into spring.
I very much hope so.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad to be here with you guys. Can we start by telling me what ACSI is and what you do here?
Yeah, ACSI is a third-party administrator for retirement plans, and what that means, or otherwise known as a TPA, we are a retirement plans lawyer, accountant, and HR assistant to ensure that the plan is operationally successful as well as complies with all rules and regulations and laws. And then we otherwise do annual IRS and Department of Labor filings on behalf of small to medium-sized businesses retirement plans.
That's awesome, because as a small business ourselves, I just went through the PPA and the annual census, and I can't stand doing it. And so it's such a benefit for small businesses to have that service that you guys offer.
That's exactly right. So we really are a white glove TPA firm in ensuring that a business owner or a HR representative at a small to medium sized business is really as hands off as possible on their 401k plan and other retirement plans, and otherwise has a very successful plan that they don't need to worry about because they've got a great team behind them. And
that's super important because there's so much compliance that goes into it, which is awesome that you have everything in-house, from the retirement side to attorneys and legal and HR and benefits, to kind of keep it all easy for your employers that you work with.
That's right. So one of our big differentiators is that we continue to do all of our work in America, in Buffalo, New York. We're an office of about 35 employees. We've been around since 1982, and we partner with about 40% of all of the small to medium-sized businesses 401k plans in Western New York. So
that's great.
The largest independent third-party administrator in the area, and we, enjoy working with Buffalo and Western New York-based businesses on their retirement.
Well, I love that. Super important for all the employers to offer a good competitive 401k and retirement plans for their employees, and important for the employees to have their retirement kind of there for them as a plan, an option, and benefit to capitalize on. James, tell me your story about how you got to your role as president of ACSI.
Yeah, great question. So I found myself as a partner of a TPA firm sort of by accident. I grew up in Buffalo. I worked in finance. I lived in New York City, and my dad purchased ACSI in 2011. And I pledged to never become a third-party administrator. I wanted absolutely nothing to do with the business. And then as the industry has consolidated over the last couple of years, it became a lot more compelling for me to move back to Buffalo and look to transition into the TPA field. And for the past couple of years, I've worked through many different parts of the organizations, from the bottom of the ACSI totem pole now to the top of it, and otherwise am a TPA for life now.
TPA for life, I love that. What was so compelling about that opportunity for you?
Yeah, great question. There were previously about 600 third-party administrators across the United States just back in 2020. There are about 90 today. So private equity firms are buying up all of the TPAs, moving all of the work largely overseas to either India or Bangladesh or Northern Africa. And that has really been a big boon to ACSI's business, because there is a lot of opportunity for businesses looking to work with local American-driven retirement plan compliance work. And that's been a big opening for us and a big opportunity.
That's awesome. Now, with living in New York previously, did you ever think you'd come back to Buffalo?
I did not think I'd come back to Buffalo, and my wife, who is not from Buffalo, definitely did not envision herself living in Buffalo, but we've been back for the last couple of years and really enjoying it.
That's awesome. How did you convince her to come back?
It took a lot of years and a lot of convincing, but she came back here, and she actually works at ACSI with me.
Oh, that's great. How nice. I have friends who moved out of the area, and their spouse is not from the area, and it's like they bring them on all these trips and just show them Buffalo at its finest.
That's right.
To really try and get them to move to Buffalo.
Well, funny enough, the first time my wife ever went to Buffalo was that big blizzard we had in December around Christmas time was the very first time she ever visited Buffalo.
Boy.
So for the next couple of years, I had to remind her it doesn't always snow this hard, and unfortunately it has snowed pretty hard the last couple of years. But it was a journey to get her here, but we're happy to be back.
Oh, I'm glad. And for you, it probably is really wonderful that you worked in New York City. You got to experience that big city life and probably big corporations, and it's very different business atmosphere there than it is in Buffalo. And like you said, you're working with a lot of local Western New York businesses, and I can imagine feeling more impact working with them than if you were in the New York City area.
Yeah, there's a trust factor that Western New York individuals have between each other, which I always find to be kind of an interesting dynamic, where having Buffalo, New York in my email signature seems to take a layer down or a shield down when I'm talking with someone, and sort of we have almost a mutual trust in the beginning of our conversation just because we have such a shared experience.
Yeah, I love it. One of our previous podcast guests was Carmen Morreale from Metro Data Services, pre-employment screenings. And we just talked about, being a local business. And for me, when I work with other partners, I want to know who I'm calling, whether it's payroll, retirement, background screening. I'm able to pick up the phone and call someone directly when I have a problem or an issue or a question to help me navigate that. So I'm sure that's probably the same service you provide to the businesses you work with here too.
Yeah, that's a big part of Kristen's role.
Yeah.
I like to say that Kristen is sort of like a firefighter. She puts out the fires for our clients, and just being able to call Kristen and know that she's a real person located in the community and, is sort of on the client side goes a long way in providing the work that we do and making everyone feel great along the way.
That makes such big impact too, is having that connection and that relationship locally.
Most
so
definitely.
Kristen, tell me about your story as Senior Relationship Manager here at ACSI and how you got here.
Yeah, so my story is a little bit different from James. I actually was a former financial advisor assistant who had a book of business of 401k plans and actually partnered with ACSI on my book, and just the amount of value and education they provided me personally around those plans that we were administering, just really aligning on those values and that service just really had me wanting to join forces with James and the ACSI team to even go a bit further with our clients and really help them as much as they've helped me, and as well as helping other advisors.
Oh, that's great. Now, how long have you been with ACSI?
So I joined in September, but just was able to dive right in with my prior knowledge and, just the team atmosphere of ACSI, and just, diving in headfirst to solve any problems, and just, again, giving that white glove experience, being able to pick up the phone on the first ring or the first email, in a first hour or two goes a long way for clients and advisors.
I'm sure, yeah. And I love that you call it the white glove experience. I think that's super important. It just shows your commitment to your clients, the service they're going to get when it comes to their needs for their employees and the plans that they work with. So let's step back a little bit. Let's talk about what TPA is.
Yeah, so, a TPA is really sort of the quarterback, not to use a football analogy, but the individual who's really ensuring that all of the various moving parts and the complexities in your retirement plan are proactively addressed, so that you, as the owner of a local plumbing business, for example, can focus on being a plumber and not also need to be a retirement plan expert. So we are, providing legal services around the establishment of retirement plans, oftentimes, unfortunately, the fixing of retirement plan mistakes made with other providers. We're providing accounting services as it relates to your annual IRS and Department of Labor filings that are a tax return due for every retirement plan, so we're completing that on behalf of a business. And then we are really an HR expert and outsourcing extra set of hands to ensure that your plan is operationally successful. So one of the things we like to say is we partner with about 1,100 small to medium-sized businesses, largely across Western New York, but also nationwide. And many times those businesses are having the same 15 issues pretty consistently. So we can systematically take what we've learned in seeing the same issue 500 other times and help oftentimes proactively assist a client with avoiding having that issue down the road because
Right.
we know where the pain points are in a retirement plan.
You kind of have the pain points all lined up, kind of expecting them
That's
for some companies to know that they might have to navigate that at some point, and you have the solutions ready for them.
That's exactly right, yeah. And in a big part of our role too is sort of understanding the audience and understanding their abilities around the ability to manage their own retirement plan and figuring out how we can plug those gaps to ensure that the plans are successful, even if the individual doesn't know A, B, and C, they only know D, E, and F.
When would a company come to you, and like how do they know, like, I need to work with a third party administrator?
Yeah, so a lot of times it comes down to the advisor relationship. So
Okay.
that's usually when we get brought into the conversation. So it could be up front when you're starting a retirement plan, or if it's with a different provider and maybe they're just not getting the right service or they're not helping the client exactly be able to navigate their issues, they'll bring us in we're just more experienced. We know the record keepers almost as best as they do, really, because we're in their system so much. So when you bring in a really knowledgeable party that can do a better plan design, make it more operationally efficient, and when you have a local team member to, again, help plug those gaps like James had just mentioned, it just makes it to be a much more better experience. Again, as he alluded to, sometimes they bring us in too late to the game.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of cleanup and problem solving and cleaning up some messes, but we eventually get you to this nice point where it's just clean, smooth sailing, and from there on out, you don't have to worry about any operational issues.
That's great. Now, when a company comes in, we know it's not a one size fits all approach, right? So are there different plans that you help them navigate to figure out what makes the most sense for their business, the amount of employees they have, and kind of their goals?
Yeah, great question. We, for the most part, are only working on 401k, 403b plans, 403b plans being retirement plans for nonprofits, and defined benefit pension plans, which are a much smaller part of the industry today, but are a part of the industry still.
Yeah.
Other retirement plans that are outside of the scope of 401k, 403b plans, and defined benefit plans do not need a third-party administrator.
Okay.
So they are simpler retirement plans, typically a simple IRA. Because of some of the limitations of those retirement plans, you don't need to do IRS and Department of Labor required work each year, and therefore you don't need a third-party administrator. So typically, when we're brought in to a business or an organization trying to decide whether or not they are a fit for a 401k or 403b plan or a pension plan, we'll help them make the decision in conjunction with their financial advisor whether or not it's worth paying for a TPA and having a 401k or 403b plan, or if they'd be better serviced by a simpler retirement plan.
That's great, because I think sometimes people just don't know where to start.
That's
when
right.
you're a business owner, you don't know where to start. You kind of sometimes don't even know what your options are. So having someone coach you through that and develop the plan that, again, makes the most sense for your business and your people and the goals is super helpful.
That's right. And, maybe to add to that, we oftentimes are being approached by plans that already exist.
Yeah.
So a bigger focus on a day-to-day basis is fixing what is not working today in their current retirement plans versus otherwise needing to decide between the different retirement plans moving forward.
When you are working with a company to navigate those pain points of a plan that hasn't been working and helping getting them back on track or on the right track, what does that conversation go like?
Unfortunately, a lot of those instances begin with an IRS or Department of Labor inquiry or audit, or a significant compliance mistake that oftentimes has a huge penalty associated with it. Yeah. And then we're brought in to help mop up the mess. One, because we know how to do so. Two, because we have a bit of a reputation for doing so.
That's great.
And we're willing to do so. Yeah. And we'll really approach it in three ways. One, fix what is the pressing issue today. Two, ensure that they're set up in a way that there's not going to be a future issue and they understand sort of what they need to do to avoid that future issue that looks a lot like the one they're having today, and then otherwise get the plan operating successfully and sort of headache-free into the future, because some of the baseline foundational work's been built through the process of taking over the plan.
Yeah.
The other area where that also comes into play, or where we're getting introduced to plans often, is just, 80% of all the TPAs over the last 5 years have been bought by private equity firms and moved overseas. So we're also being brought in a lot because, they've lost connection with their past TPA and the work quality has nosedived, and we're able to plug back in and show that there are a few TPA firms left in the US that are doing this work in America and doing it the way that everyone used to experience this work in the past.
I love it. The boots on the ground.
That's right. Boots on the ground and people who care versus, work done overseas and a 1-800 number.
Exactly. And that's what I said earlier. I don't love. I'm like, if I call 1-800 number, you don't know me, you don't know my business, and you don't know my people or what my issues might be. And you're just giving me a canned response on the phone because you are just, trained call center.
That's right. And even more so in a call center driven environment, you're responsible for asking the questions and figuring out the information you need to know. When you work with someone who can do personalized work with you, a good TPA is telling you what you need to know when you need to know it in a proactive way so that you don't have to worry about it unless your TPA has told you you need to worry about it.
And I'm sorry, if you're dealing with compliance and legal and audits from the IRS and heavy fines, like, I don't want a 1-800 number. I want someone who can come, be on site and help me clean up a mess and make sure I'm set up for success so that doesn't happen again.
Of course.
Their retirement plans can be complex, and they're becoming more complex. Why is that? Like, what's happening?
Great question. You want to start with this?
Yeah, sure. So part of it is the ever-changing legislation, like Secure and Secure 2.0. All those changes have impacted eligibility, contributions that employees and employers can make, testing, types of documentation that are required. So a lot of that is just ever evolving. In an average HR department, employer can't keep up with that.
Right.
So that's why you also have us, a really knowledgeable TPA to take on and digest that information and again relay what you need to know and what you need to do to be compliant.
Yeah.
I think furthermore, maybe at a higher level, what's interesting is that retirement plans are one of the only bipartisan things left from a political standpoint, and they are passing significant legislation to change retirement plans. And the way that legislation is being passed, it's only able to add to retirement plans. It's not able to change what is already passed in legislation from a retirement plan standpoint. So Congress is passing these bills to change retirement plans, but they're only doing so in a way that's layering on more complexity. There's legislation being passed to change retirement plans in a way that sounds like it's a great idea, but the people who are actually doing retirement plans on a day-to-day basis are like, everyone is overwhelmed and this isn't working, please stop adding more complexity. And with that, I joined this industry later than others did, but I often say to myself, like, if we started over, it wouldn't be this way. Like, it's just a really broken industry with a lot of different parties going through huge transformation. TPAs are all getting bought by private equity firms. The individuals managing their retirement plans, the record keepers themselves, are struggling with profitability, and they're looking to decline in the services that they're providing. TPAs are declining in the services that they're providing. Retirement plans are getting a lot more complex. And because of all of those moving parts, businesses are starved for expertise, and there's not a lot of places left to go find that expertise.
When you bring up some points about, government regulations and legislation that are passing when it comes to retirement plans, and we've talked about Secure and Secure 2.0. I know we were getting kind of inundated at the start of 2026 with communications from different people, not necessarily our retirement broker, because we've been enrolled in a 401k plan, but other brokers out there, whether it was benefit brokers, payroll providers, being and almost scaring people into like, you got to change something. Like you're doing 401k plans, but you need Secure 2.0. What does that change for my business? And I read it as, we're good. We have just less than 10 people, but we've had 401k plans since 2018 or 2019, I want to say. So I know our employees have been offered that benefit. But then when the Secure 2.0 came out, my business partner got an alert from a benefit broker, and she's like, what do I need to do? And immediately emailed our broker and was like, what does this mean for us? And I was like, I think it means we're okay. But tell me more about like what Secure 2.0 can mean for businesses.
Yeah, so there's two things that really came out for 2026. So what you're talking about is the Secure 2.0 amendment. So those are changes that you can add to the 401k plan. Some you automatically have to adopt and have had to adopt it already, and some are optional. So we are advising our clients on, what that means for them, what makes sense, and kind of guiding them, to what is appropriate for amending their plan documents to adopt those. But also at the same time, for 2026, New York came out with their retirement mandate, New York Secure Choice.
Oh, Secure Choice. So I totally messed it. I was talking about Secure Choice, confusing with Secure and Secure 2.0.
Well, again, the names are so similar, it's very easy to. So
talk about pain points.
Exactly. So you have changes if you already administer a 401k plan, changes you have to make to your plan documents. But then you also now have to comply with the state regulation to what you're saying. Like, we have a plan. What does this mean? So the state has put out a retirement mandate that all businesses need to have a retirement plan in place. Otherwise, they will be auto-enrolled in the state program. This is New York's not the first state to do this.
Right.
Many other blue states have had this over the years, and we're just kind of taking a carbon copy of what's been done in the past. But yeah, every employer within, New York needs to comply with this mandate.
Which I think is great. I mean, I think, employers should offer retirement plans, at least offer them to your employees, and having, another option for employees to enroll is great. But I mean, you just saw my confusion as a business owner of a small business. It can be overwhelming for people. So knowing that there are groups like ACSI out there to help small businesses navigate this is so helpful.
Yeah, that's right. And, the positives being there's a network effect around 401k plans where, the adoption of 401k plans will cause other businesses to adopt 401k plans. And you actually see it driven by these state mandates across the U.S. that have started, New York having launched theirs in 2026. So there's definitely a significant wave of 401k adoption already coming, which is going to help businesses that don't have a plan today be encouraged to start a plan, which is great. The negatives of which, however, are that, again, they're being pushed into a potentially very complex retirement plan that they don't understand, managed by individuals who don't know what they're doing, and can get themselves into trouble quite quickly if, they don't have a strong partner assisting them through the process.
What's a major difference for people with enrolling in Secure Choice versus like a managed retirement plan, like a 401k program with your company?
Great question. So the New York plan is essentially just an employer-sponsored Roth IRA account. So the contribution limits are very small, about $8,000 versus a 401k plan where you could put in between $24,000 and $33,000 depending on how old you are. The New York plan is a much simpler plan, but the goal of the New York plan, and they say this really explicitly in the New York State Secure Choice Board, the individuals who started the plan, is merely to encourage businesses to, one, either start their own plan or to participate in the New York State's plan. And actually, again, because the carbon copy of this program has been live in 15 other states, more people end up starting 401k plans because of this program than actually participating in the state programs themselves. And that's a positive win for the state overall. Like they're just starting what is a very simple plan and likely not a great fit for many businesses, because the mandate overall will encourage businesses to say the New York State's plan is very simple. If I'm going to go through the process to start a plan, I don't want something that's simple. This is the moment where I'm going to finally start a 401k plan. I'm being pushed into it in some ways, but I get, there are tax credits available for starting a 401k plan, which are really significant. So
which is huge. Yeah. And I think employers should know that.
That's right.
Too. Yeah. And sometimes they don't.
Exactly right.
Now, when it comes to New York State Secure Choice versus starting your own 401k plan, to me, it seems like you have more control over a plan and what you're offering your employees when you go through like an ACSI to set up a 401k plan.
Yeah, so you have a lot more flexibility. Sometimes that flexibility is really good. Sometimes that flexibility gets you into trouble, but you do have a lot more flexibility. Again, you can 401k plans, for all intents and purposes, are oftentimes or almost always free for 3 years because the government tax credits will cover your out-of-pocket expenses for the first 3 years for most businesses that exist that are starting a plan for the first time. So they're flexible, they're oftentimes free for a couple of years, and third, they're much more beneficial to the owners of the business than the near version of the program because the contributions are so much higher. And then finally, employees value 401k plans. It's consistently rated one of the top 3 benefits that employees are looking for when they're looking for a job. They're not valuing a New York State retirement plan, which doesn't even have an employer contribution into it.
That's a great point. I think that employer contribution is huge. I remember when I got my first job out of college and I really didn't know what a 401k was. My parents came from careers that had pension available to them, and I didn't know anything about an employer match. And I remember my manager being like, get the max match you can, like make sure you take advantage of it, otherwise you're leaving money on the table. And so I think that education component is huge for employers and employees to make sure that it is a strategic advantage for the company itself when offering that benefit and attracting people to their organization.
Most definitely.
So when talking about 401k plans, retirement plans, and partnering with ACSI, are there certain companies that are a good fit for ACSI, size, industry? Tell me more about the types of companies that would really benefit from working with you.
Yeah, so we partner with businesses as small as 1 employee and as large as 50,000 employees and everything in between. So our sweet spot is typically 2 to 100 person business. They have a small HR team who needs support and 401k and retirement plan expertise overall and needs a business owner to not be involved in the day-to-day operations of the plan. But we can scale and work with companies, and we do work with companies that are significantly larger than that core market. And where we do a really particularly good job in the larger plan space and the larger employer space is when businesses are very acquisitive. So 401k plans and other retirement plans in a acquisition environment, so companies who's doing a lot of acquisitions are extremely complex and oftentimes neglected as part of the overall due diligence that attorneys are doing. So we will actually plug in and really use our legal services to ensure that the acquisition work going on that businesses are doing doesn't violate rules and regulations around retirement plans, and that proactivity doesn't get them into a situation that's irreversible because no one has thought about the retirement plan when they're thinking about everything else going on behind the acquisition.
And it sounds like having the legal team part of ACSI is super helpful. So I'm sure every company has their own business attorney, but that takes up an extra step of looping in that business attorney. When it's all right here, it's being all done in-house, making sure everything's compliant within regulations and legal.
That's right. And even more so than, some of that specialized expertise, it's just client coverage that matters at the end of the day. So if you work with a record keeper, that record keeper's main contact that you're interacting with probably has between 300 and 500 other clients assigned to them. If you work in a TPA model, the average TPA's plan administrators, day-to-day contact for a retirement plan is working on between 100 and 120 plans. At ACSI, each of our 35 employees works on between 45 and 55 plans each. It's that ability to go a mile deep that ensures the work that we're doing, whether it's legal focused or accounting focused or operationally focused, is off the plate of the company itself, and they know that we have their backs to ensure that their plan is going to be successful.
Awesome. Tell me more about your team here. You mentioned it a couple of times. I probably should have dove deeper into it. We've talked about client relations and relationship management that Kristen does, the work you do. We talked about the legal team, but there's 35 people who work here, and I'm sure you have, how many clients did you say?
About 1,000.
About 1,000. That's a lot. So I'm sure there's a lot of people behind the scenes that help to make sure the job is getting done and you're protecting your clients and offering them the white glove service that you mentioned.
Yeah, one of the things that I think is really interesting about ACSI is that the employees overall come from the most diverse backgrounds that you could possibly imagine. Some of my very best employees are former teachers, We just hired a former principal at one of the local high schools in
my
Buffalo. We have an interior designer executive, a former interior designer who's an executive around here, and everything in between. And of course, we have people with accounting and legal backgrounds as well. But it's the diversity of the employees that I think allow us to interact with our clients at a really strong level. And we do a lot of work around partnering businesses with the right ACSI employee,
I love
because
that.
some businesses interact very well with someone with a very analytical background, and some businesses want someone with a more customer relationship type of background. And it's the ability for us to match our employees with businesses that allows them to develop a really long-standing relationship where they build that trust with an ACSI employee and know that Jeanette or John or whomever it is really, gonna be their contact one for forever, and two, really has their back to manage their retirement plans. One of the things we do really interesting around here is that we only work 4 days a week for 32 weeks a year.
Cool.
So that people generally retire here. So the average tenure of our employee is about 10 years because people enjoy a really strong work-life balance, and that benefits our clients because our clients get to know someone at a really deep level, and the person that they interact with at ACSI is likely to be their ACSI day-to-day contact until they retire.
I love that. I love hiring from unique backgrounds too. I think a lot of companies can benefit from doing that and finding some of those transferable skills that can really be a game changer for the people you work with, and they bring some unique perspectives too.
That's right, and we've been doing this for 50 years now, so the process is ironed out, and you can teach anyone, no matter what their background is or who they are, how to administer a retirement plan, how to provide the advice to a small to medium-sized business, and how to be that strong partner to that business to ensure that their plan is really successful and compliant and otherwise headache-free.
That's awesome. So there's things you can teach, right, when hiring, but there's things you can't teach. So what do you look for in an employee for ACSI from like a culture and personality perspective?
Positivity is hands down the most important thing, in our hiring process, because we are oftentimes plugging into a business at some of their lowest points overall from a benefit standpoint. As an industry provider that's sort of known for mopping up messes, we need people who can talk through a problem with a business owner in a way that not only provides expertise and solutions to their problems, but also does so in a way that they feel confident in continuing to offer that retirement plan to their employees, feel confident in their ability to handle their work in the future and understand and are bought into what is their small level of work required, but the work required nonetheless to be offering a plan to their employees.
That's awesome. So if someone's looking for a third-party administrator, or maybe they're just at a crossroads with their 401k, or they want to start a plan, how can they get in touch with ACSI and the white glove service you guys provide?
Well, certainly they could email Kristen and I. My email is jbrand@acsi-ny.com. They can also go to www.acsi-ny.com, and there's a little ticketing system. They could just submit a ticket to get in contact with us. Or, again, we're working with about 40% of all the small to medium-sized businesses in Western New York, so I'm sure a mutual contact of ours could get us in contact. And I'd say one of the things that's built ACSI over the last 50 years is free advice. Like, I give free advice to, truly hundreds of individuals each month around retirement plans. We are always happy to answer questions and provide our expertise, whether or not we are a fit for your organization, because that's what develops our business and our trust in the community. And also, we just recognize how hard this is.
Yeah.
And if we can help, and oftentimes that help is 5 minutes of work because we've seen the issue 50 times, we're happy to do so.
That's awesome. So you can go to acsi-ny.com.
That's right.
Or email James at jbrand@acsi-ny.com. Or Kristen, I'm assuming it's Huffcut at acsi-ny.com.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much for joining us. I really appreciate the conversation. And it's always so interesting to me. 401ks affect everyone. Whether you have a 401k, a 403b, pension plans, like retirement is so important. We want to plan. We're not working, for nothing in the future. We want to be able to retire and enjoy that time and feel secure and confident that we're able to live a life that we worked hard for. So having someone who can stand by and partner with employers to really help them navigate that is so important. So thank you for the work you do and for making this conversation much more enlightening and fun, and providing that white glove service to the clients you work with.
Of course. Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
We enjoyed it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And thank you for listening to the Pain Points Podcast. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Pain Points Podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to follow us so you never miss out on future episodes.